And then she said it, Hot Wheels, and the whole room froze. It was a moment no one saw coming. What started as a tense political debate turned into a viral storm that had Texas Governor Greg Abbott laughing, lawmakers stunned, and Representative Jasmine Crockett facing censure. But behind the laughter, there's a bigger question. Was this just a joke gone wrong, or a silencing of a bold voice? Here's the full story that's lighting up headlines and social media. It all began during a chaotic, emotionally charged session in the U.S. House of Representatives, where political tensions were already stretched to the limit. Jasmine Crockett, a rising Democratic firebrand known for a sharp wit and unapologetic approach, took to the floor ready to call out what she saw as blatant hypocrisy from her Republican counterparts. The debate centered on state-level leadership and policy failures, and Crockett was laser-focused on Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a man she believed was using power not to uplift but to suppress. As the back and forth reached a boiling point, Crockett unleashed a line that would reverberate across every social media platform within minutes. With sharp, sarcastic tone, she said, "And y'all out here following Hot Wheels like he's Moses rolling through the desert," a direct and undeniable reference to Abbott's wheelchair. The room went completely silent. Gasps echoed across the chamber. A few members smirked behind their papers. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Aides quickly looked at one another in shock. No one had expected her to go there. Not like that. Not on the record. Not in such a bold, brutal way. Even among the most seasoned political operatives, jaws were on the floor. The nickname Hot Wheels wasn't new. It had floated around Twitter for years as a meme used by left-leaning users to mock Abbott's stances while pointing out his disability. But no one had dared to say it live on record, and certainly not in a congressional session. Within moments, phones started buzzing. Staffers in the chamber began discreetly texting reporters. The clip was already being clipped, and shared online by political pages both for and against her. On Twitter, the video racked up over 1 million views in just the first hour. Hashtags like hashtag Hot Wheels Gate, hashtag Crockett Unchained, and hashtag Abbott vs. Crockett began trending nationally. Memes, reaction videos, and duets flooded TikTok. The internet had found its next political lightning rod. But while the online world debated whether Crockett had gone too far or simply said what many were thinking, inside the chamber, the mood shifted sharply. Republican lawmakers were furious. To them, this wasn't just an insult. It was deeply offensive, ableist, and personal. Texas representatives in particular were outraged, saying the remark crossed every imaginable line of decorum and decency. Within minutes of the incident, Republican leaders called for immediate disciplinary action. "This is beneath the dignity of this House," one Texas lawmaker declared on the floor, visibly shaking with anger. Others followed suit, calling for censure and public apology. Reporters raced to get quotes from both parties. Media outlets started issuing push notifications. Representative Jasmine Crockett under fire for calling Governor Abbott Hot Wheels. Meanwhile, back in Texas, news outlets broke into regular programming to cover the story live, with local anchors calling it the most disrespectful moment in legislative history. But what added gasoline to the fire was Greg Abbott's reported reaction. According to sources close to the governor, Abbott didn't respond with outrage. Instead, he laughed. Yes, laughed. "She thinks I haven't heard worse?" He was quoted saying privately, allegedly chuckling as he brushed the moment off. This reaction only deepened the storm. Some saw Abbott's laughter as proof of grace and strength, claiming it made Crockett look immature and petty. Others said it was a deliberate PR move, a strategic laugh to avoid giving her more power or attention. Either way, the incident became bigger than a one-liner. News anchors debated its meaning. Political commentators analyzed every word, every gesture. Disability rights groups began issuing statements. Some condemned Crockett, saying the comment was dehumanizing and hurtful. Others took a more nuanced stance, saying while the language was harsh, the real issue was Abbott's record, not his disability. Crockett, for a part, didn't back down. In interviews following the censure calls, she made it clear that her intention was not to mock the governor's physical condition, but to mock what she called his crippling policies on education, reproductive rights, and criminal justice. He uses his position to roll over the rights of Texans, she said in one interview, doubling down on the metaphor. If y'all are more offended by the nickname than the legislation, then you've got your priorities twisted. Her words struck a nerve. Supporters flooded her social media with encouragement, praising her bravery and calling her a voice for the voiceless. Opponents doubled down, labeling her disrespectful, out of control, and unfit to serve. But even among her critics, there was one undeniable truth. She had dominated the news cycle. Whether people agreed with her or not, everyone was talking about her. She had taken on one of the most powerful Republican figures in the country and didn't flinch. In an age where viral moments shape political careers, Jasmine Crockett had just etched her name in the headlines, for better or worse. The House hadn't even adjourned yet, and already the clip was being replayed on every cable news network. Across the country, dinner tables buzzed with conversations about whether she was out of line or simply unfiltered. And in the middle of it all, the image of Greg Abbott laughing as a political firestorm exploded became the most surreal twist of all. Republican lawmakers did not wait even a full hour before launching a coordinated response that sent a clear message. Jasmine Crockett's Hot Wheels comment would not go unpunished. Almost immediately after the session recessed, Texas Republicans huddled behind closed doors, drafting what would become one of the most aggressive censure motions in recent congressional memory. The resolution cited Crockett for derogatory, ableist language, accusing her of violating the standards of decorum and respect expected in the House chamber. By early evening, the censure document was officially introduced. Cameras swarmed Capitol Hill. Reporters chased representatives through hallways for quotes. News networks went into breaking coverage mode. While the internet debated the meme-worthiness of the moment, the political establishment treated it like a five-alarm fire. GOP leaders, particularly from Texas, stepped up to the microphone and condemned Crockett in the strongest terms possible. One Republican from Dallas angrily declared, "This is not Twitter. This is the United States Congress. We do not mock disabilities. This is not just tasteless, it's shameful." Another followed up saying, "It's one thing to disagree on policy. It's another to degrade a man's condition in front of the nation. She must be held accountable." Several members invoked personal stories of family members who live with disabilities, using emotional language to push their point. At that moment, it was clear the Republican strategy was to frame this not as political theater, but as a moral and ethical violation. They wanted the public to see Crockett as not just controversial, but unfit for leadership. And to some degree, the strategy worked. Cable networks like Fox News, Newsmax, and even some centrist commentators began questioning whether the Hot Wheels comment was too personal, too harsh, and too far removed from legitimate political critique. Some Democratic representatives privately expressed discomfort, especially those in more moderate districts, saying they wish Crockett had chosen her words more carefully. A few even hinted that they would consider abstaining or not defending her during the censure vote, to avoid backlash from their own constituents. Still, Jasmine Crockett remained defiant. While other politicians may have issued a quick apology, Crockett took the exact opposite approach. She hit the media circuit. In interviews with MSNBC, The Young Turks, and independent YouTube outlets, she stood her ground. She explained that her comment was metaphorical, that it wasn't about mocking Abbott's disability, but mocking how he rolls over people's rights and liberties without a second thought. She doubled down on the core of her argument, that Governor Abbott's policies have devastated working-class families, limited women's health care, and stripped voting rights from minorities across Texas. If y'all were half as offended by his legislation as you are by my language, maybe Texas wouldn't be in crisis, she said during a fiery sit-down with Roland Martin. Her supporters rallied quickly. Progressive groups issued statements defending her passion and focus. Activists flooded Twitter with messages of solidarity, shifting the conversation from her words to Abbott's record. "We don't censure people for bad jokes. We censure people for bad policies," one viral tweet read, gaining over 500,000 likes. Still, the House was moving full steam ahead. The censure vote was scheduled within 48 hours. Political insiders said the speed was intentional, a way to punish her while the outrage was still hot. In the lead up to the vote, Crockett gave one final floor speech that electrified her base. She said, "If standing up against oppression makes me a target, then so be it. Y'all want to punish me for a nickname? Fine. But I see children getting shot in schools and women forced to drive 500 miles for health care, and nobody's getting censured for that. What are we really doing here? The chamber was tense. Applause broke out among a few Democrats, but Republicans remained stone-faced. When the vote was finally held, the results were what most expected. Jasmine Crockett was officially censured by the House of Representatives, with nearly all Republicans voting in favor and a handful of Democrats abstaining. As the gavel dropped, Crockett didn't flinch. She looked straight ahead, calm, collected, and unbothered. In fact, she posted on X, formerly Twitter, less than 10 minutes later, censured for calling out power. Not the first time. Won't be the last. Hashtag still standing. That tweet alone got over 2 million impressions in under an hour. Her political fundraising team launched a new campaign email titled, "They Censured Me. I'm Not Backing Down." Within 24 hours, her campaign had raised more than $110,000. The irony wasn't lost on political analysts. Crockett may have been punished on paper, but in the real arena of public opinion and grassroots support, she had just won big. For Republicans, the censure was meant to silence and isolate, but for Crockett, it became a badge of honor, a symbol of rebellion against a system she spent her career fighting. Whether people agreed with her methods or not, the outcome was clear. She had taken a hit and turned it into fuel. And with every interview, every donation, and every retweet, she reminded everyone watching that sometimes punishment only makes a voice louder. As the censure fallout unfolded and Jasmine Crockett made headlines for her unapologetic stance, the unexpected twist came from none other than Texas Governor Greg Abbott himself. While his political allies were furiously condemning Crockett and calling for disciplinary action, reports began to emerge that Abbott, when first shown the clip of her Hot Wheels comment, actually laughed. Yes, laughed, according to multiple sources within his inner circle. The governor let out a low chuckle, waved his hand dismissively, and reportedly said something along the lines of, "She thinks that's new? I've heard worse in junior high." That reaction sent a ripple effect through both conservative and liberal circles and instantly changed the tone of the story. It was no longer just about what Crockett said, but how Abbott responded. To some, Abbott's laugh was a display of strength, a political jiu-jitsu move that turned a personal insult into an opportunity to appear above it all. His communications team began playing into that narrative, sending out talking points to local stations and media outlets framing Abbott as unshaken, focused, and too busy leading Texas to care about schoolyard insults. But not everyone bought the calm and collected image. To others, particularly progressives and activists, Abbott's laugh felt strategic, like a calculated effort to avoid real accountability or deep conversation about his policies. Of course he laughed, one viral commentator said on Instagram Live, because if he gets angry, people might actually start talking about the truth in what Jasmine said. That became the counter-narrative, that Crockett's insult was a spark, but the flame it ignited was about much more than a nickname. The debate expanded beyond just decorum and respect. It became about the kind of leadership Abbott represented and whether his policies truly served the people of Texas. Disability rights advocates were split. Some condemned Crockett's words outright, insisting no person should have their disability mocked, public official or not. But others saw Abbott's laughter as a dangerous deflection tactic. "He may be disabled," one prominent advocate tweeted, "but that doesn't make his policies less harmful." Laughing it off doesn't erase what his administration has done to marginalized communities. Suddenly, Abbott's grin was no longer harmless. It was a political weapon. Pundits across major news channels chimed in. On CNN, a panel debated whether Abbott's response was graceful or gaslighting. On The View, the hosts clashed over whether Crockett's comment should be seen as punching down or punching up. Even conservative hosts like Ben Shapiro and Jesse Waters brought it up, with Waters sarcastically suggesting that Crockett had done Abbott a favor by making him look like the adult in the room. But beneath the spin, the core question remained. Was Abbott laughing because he truly wasn't offended, or because he couldn't afford to be? One thing was certain, he wasn't ignoring it. While Abbott refrained from making public appearances to discuss the matter, his campaign began quietly using the incident to rally his base. Fundraising emails were sent out with subject lines like, "They mocked me, but I'm still standing strong, and this is what the left thinks is funny." Within days, Abbott had raised hundreds of thousands from donors who saw him as a target of the radical left. Social media posts from his official pages began subtly referencing the controversy, sometimes with cryptic phrases like, "Stay focused," "Stay moving forward." The phrase "moving forward" caught attention, with some commentators pointing out the irony of using such language in the context of mobility. Whether intentional or not, the wording created even more viral discussion. Meanwhile, the internet continued to spiral. TikTok creators made videos reenacting the exchange between Crockett and Abbott, often with dueling voiceovers that alternated between mocking both politicians. Twitter threads debated whether Hot Wheels was a creative metaphor or a needlessly cruel jab. Memes of Abbott in a souped-up cartoon wheelchair labeled Hot Wheels Edition circulated alongside more serious political infographics comparing his legislative record to other governors. In the swirl of chaos, Abbott's team tried to keep the narrative tightly controlled. Abbott was a steady hand, the man who wouldn't let insults distract him from the business of governing. But in politics, perception is everything, and his calm demeanor was also seen by some as dismissive, robotic, or even arrogant. Critics began questioning why Abbott couldn't respond to real issues with the same emotion he used to dismiss an insult. Where's that humor when women are begging for reproductive health care? One commentator asked. Where's the laugh when Texans freeze in winter storms? Others flipped the script entirely, saying Abbott laughing at the comment was actually more offensive than the comment itself, because it trivialized the pain of those who live with disabilities every day. Crockett's defenders leaned into that logic, arguing that Abbott was only pretending not to care, so that he wouldn't have to address the substance behind her words. The Hot Wheels controversy wasn't just a firestorm. It was a reflection of how quickly politics, identity, and performance can collide in the internet age. A single comment sparked a reaction from the nation, and Abbott's laughter, whether genuine or calculated, became its own political statement. In the end, Abbott didn't need to call a press conference or slam his fist on a podium. His smirk was enough to create headlines, shape narratives, and remind the country that in modern politics, even silence or a laugh can be louder than a speech. And while some saw it as strength, others saw it as cowardice hiding behind a grin. The moment Jasmine Crockett dropped the Hot Wheels line and Greg Abbott's reaction hit the media, the country found itself split in two. What started as a single exchange between a bold congresswoman and a controversial governor had exploded into a full-blown national debate. On one side were those who said Crockett crossed a line, that mocking a physical disability, no matter the political context, was unacceptable. On the other were those who believed the outrage was manufactured, a distraction used to silence a woman of color who dared to speak out in blunt, unapologetic terms. As the public weighed in, the divide only grew sharper. Cable news outlets took sides. Fox News ran multiple segments labeling Crockett as unhinged, disrespectful, and dangerously radical, while conservative commentators declared that the left had completely lost its moral compass. Over on MSNBC and progressive podcasts, however, the tone was different. They saw a double standard. People are angrier about a nickname than they are about Abbott's actual policies, said one panelist. If we put half the outrage into fighting his voter suppression laws or anti-trans legislation, Texas might be a better place. The cultural clash wasn't just happening on TV. It was everywhere. On TikTok, users were dueling over the incident with split-screen videos. Some reenacted the moment for laughs, while others used their platforms to explain how Abbott's policies had hurt real people, from underfunded schools to overwhelmed hospitals to blackouts that left millions freezing during winter storms. Crockett supporters argued that while the delivery may have been sharp, the message was real. They said she was using satire to draw attention to a pattern of cruelty disguised as governance. She didn't call out his disability. One user posted, "She called out the way he's been disabling Texas." Instagram stories and Reels picked up that message too. Dozens of creators stitched together footage of Abbott's controversial decisions with Crockett's now famous clip, effectively turning her insult into a rallying cry. The phrase "Hot Wheels" went from insult to slogan in some circles, reclaimed as a symbol of political resistance. On the ground in Texas, however, things were even more tense. Conservative voters, especially in rural counties, were furious. Local talk radio buzzed with calls from listeners demanding her resignation. She doesn't respect the office. One caller fumed. She should be ashamed of herself. Republican strategists saw an opening and wasted no time. Abbott's political machine began fundraising aggressively, with donor emails framing him as the victim of leftist hate. "They can mock my condition," one email read, "but they'll never stop my mission." The message worked. His team reportedly raised over $600,000 in the first 72 hours after the controversy broke. At the same time, Crockett's campaign donations also skyrocketed. Progressives across the country poured money into her re-election fund. A GoFundMe-style campaign launched by her supporters titled "Censured but Uncensored" reached $100,000 in just 2 days. Small dollar donations from Gen Z voters, particularly through TikTok-driven fundraising efforts, made it clear that Crockett was anything but politically wounded. If anything, her profile had grown stronger. But the divide wasn't just political, it was generational. Older voters tended to find the comment disrespectful and unbecoming of a public servant. Younger voters saw it as bold truth-telling in a world where politicians often hide behind platitudes and polished statements. One viral tweet summed it up. She said what everyone's been thinking. Abbott's policies are dangerous, and nobody has the guts to call it out like she did. That tweet was retweeted over 40,000 times and sparked a full-blown Twitter thread comparing Abbott's legislative track record with real-life impact stories. Stories of women denied abortions, families struggling with power outages, and parents unable to access adequate mental health care for their kids. In the middle of all this, disability rights organizations issued mixed responses. Some stood by Crockett's critics, saying language matters and her comment could reinforce harmful stereotypes. Others, however, focused their attention on Abbott's policy history, saying that while the words were tough, the real concern should be whether Abbott himself had supported the disability community. The man who cut funding for disability services can't suddenly be the face of victimhood. One organization spokesperson stated bluntly, the controversy also reignited conversations about how women, especially women of color, are treated in political spaces. Many Crockett defenders argued that if a white male politician had made the same joke, the reaction would have been different. Black women aren't allowed to be angry, said one political analyst. They're either called too loud or too disrespectful, even when they're speaking truth. The broader conversation became less about the word Hot Wheels and more about who gets to speak freely in politics, who gets forgiven, who gets condemned, who is allowed to push the boundaries. These weren't just rhetorical questions. They were at the heart of a growing generational and ideological divide in American politics. Abbott, for his part, remained mostly quiet beyond his initial laugh and vague fundraising language. Crockett, on the other hand, stayed loud. She continued speaking out, tweeting daily, posting videos, and even going live on Instagram to discuss policy in a way that resonated with her younger audience. "I'm not here to make y'all comfortable," she said in one live stream. "I'm here to shake the table until the people at the top start listening." Whether you agreed with her or not, one thing was undeniable. She had changed the conversation. And in today's political arena, where headlines are currency and sound bites shape public opinion, Crockett had proven she could not only survive controversy, she could use it to spark a movement. So what happens now, after all the outrage, the censure, the viral memes, and the nonstop media coverage? The dust may have started to settle, but the political consequences are just beginning to take shape. For Jasmine Crockett, the Hot Wheels moment didn't end her career. It amplified it. Instead of backing down, she has doubled down, using the controversy to energize her supporters, build a larger national profile, and position herself as one of the most fearless voices in progressive politics. She has made it clear that she's not going to play by traditional rules, and she's not going to apologize just to make others comfortable. In her words, "I'm not here to play nice, I'm here to play real." That kind of defiance resonates deeply with a younger, more engaged generation of voters who are sick of watered-down statements and politicians who tiptoe around the truth. To them, Crockett's tone is not too harsh. It's necessary. They see her as someone who actually says what they're thinking, who doesn't sanitize or message the cameras, and who calls out what others are too afraid to name. Her campaign has already seen record engagement, with new donors, thousands of new followers, and increased national media invites. From podcasts to panels, Crockett is becoming a fixture in the post-controversy political circuit. But it's not just media attention. She's also shifting the Overton window. Conversations that were previously off-limits or too edgy for mainstream discourse are now on the table because of her. Whether it's how politicians weaponize disability optics or how women of color are held to different standards, Crockett forced those issues into the national spotlight. And once they're out, they can't be ignored. At the same time, Greg Abbott is also calculating his next moves. Though he played it cool with a now-famous laugh, make no mistake, his team saw the moment as an opportunity, and they're working hard behind the scenes. The censure allowed Abbott to appear as a victim of a disrespectful attack, while distracting from the substance of his policies. His PR machine has leaned into the narrative of resilience, portraying Abbott as a leader who doesn't let insults get to him, who keeps rolling forward no matter what the left throws his way. He's using this moment to consolidate conservative support, particularly in swing regions of Texas where his popularity has been slipping. It also allows him to paint the Democratic Party as unhinged and out of touch, especially if more moderate Democrats don't speak out against Crockett. So in that sense, Abbott is playing chess while pretending it's checkers. He's smiling for the cameras, but behind closed doors, he's calculating how to use this controversy to lock in support ahead of upcoming elections. But there's a wild card neither side can fully control: the people. This whole event didn't just live inside Congress or political email blasts. It became a nationwide flashpoint for real discussions around power, presentation, and punishment. It showed how fast narratives form in the digital age and how one moment, one sentence, can become a political earthquake. And perhaps more importantly, it highlighted how traditional systems of punishment, like a formal house censure, don't carry the same weight they used to. In the age of social media, public opinion moves faster than legislation. Crockett was censored on paper, but empowered online. Her punishment became her platform. It's a new reality politicians are still learning to navigate. In today's world, being silenced by the establishment can actually make you louder with the people. So what does it all mean moving forward? For one, this moment has cemented Jasmine Crockett as a rising political force who refuses to fit the mold. Whether you view her as a hero, a disruptor, or a reckless loudmouth, one thing is undeniable: she's now a household name. Her opponents will try to use the Hot Wheels moment to paint her as extreme, but her supporters will wear it as a badge of courage. It's already being printed on T-shirts, turned into slogans, and used in voter outreach campaigns. On the flip side, Greg Abbott walks away from this controversy with his base more energized and his victimhood narrative intact. He didn't have to fight back. He just had to smile. That calculated restraint allowed him to avoid looking petty, while still letting his allies do the attacking for him. And in the current political climate, sometimes silence is louder than words. But maybe the biggest impact of this moment isn't what it did for Abbott or Crockett individually. It's what it revealed about the current state of American politics. That the line between satire and slander is razor thin. That outrage, when timed right, is a currency. That the battle isn't just over policy anymore. It's over perception, optics, emotion, and who can dominate the narrative first. Both sides learned something from this clash. For Crockett, it's that boldness is her superpower, even when it brings backlash. For Abbott, it's that staying calm under fire can be turned into campaign gold. And for the rest of the country, it's a reminder that politics today isn't about playing it safe. It's about who can make the most noise and still stand tall when the smoke clears. Whether you agree with Crockett or Abbott, this wasn't just a controversy. It was a test of what resonates in this new political era. As both sides gear up for what's next, one thing is certain: this story isn't over. It's just getting started. If you think this story was wild, wait until you hear what Jasmine Crockett said next. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more unfiltered political drama, only here on State Talk. And let us know in the comments, was a Hot Wheels comment crossing a line, or just calling out power in the rawest way possible? Backhand index pointing right, more stories coming soon. Stay loud, stay bold, stay tuned.